He tapped the security app on his phone with the same cold feeling he always had when he checked the cameras. He was sitting on the edge of a hotel bed in another country, city lights shining through the glass window behind him, his tie pulled loose, his heart already tired. He did not open the app to feel safe. He opened it to catch someone failing. 11 caregivers before this one had lied to him, shouted at his boys when they thought no one could hear, stolen from his house, treated his sons like broken dolls. So when the live view from his living room loaded and he saw 3 empty wheelchairs sitting in the middle of the floor, his whole body froze. The chairs were right where he remembered them, lined up like small metal thrones in front of the big TV, but there were no boys in them, no little bodies leaning to one side, no small heads tilted back. Just 3 empty seats under the soft ceiling lights. His first thought was that the app had glitched. His second thought was that something terrible had happened. His thumb zoomed in by instinct, his breath stuck in his throat. Then he saw movement at the edge of the frame. 3 small figures, 3 little boys in matching sweatpants and t-shirts, legs wobbly, feet unsure, stepping away from the wheelchairs. They were not sitting, they were not strapped in, they were standing. One boy's hand was on the arm of the couch. Another had both arms stretched out like he was walking on a tightrope. The third was halfway between them, knees shaking, face bright with effort. In front of them stood the new maid, a young woman in a simple house dress and socks, her arms wide open, tears shining on her cheeks as she called to them, her mouth moving fast. The boys moved toward her, dragging their feet, then lifting them one slow step at a time. It looked wrong. It looked impossible. It looked exactly like the thing every doctor had told him would never, ever happen. Nathan Reed, a man who could sign a deal worth more than some small towns in one afternoon, watched his 3 paralyzed sons take steps on a phone screen hundreds of miles from home, and the world inside his chest tipped sideways. His phone slid from his fingers and hit the carpet. His back slammed into the wall behind him. For a long second he could not breathe. The triplets were walking. The woman he had hired to feed them, bathe them, and keep them safe was calling them forward like a coach, like a mother, like someone who believed in something he had already buried. What was she doing with his sons? How was this even real? Before we go back to how everything started, where are you watching from right now? Tell us in the comments, drop your city or your country, because this story is about to shake what you think is possible. 2 years earlier, Nathan thought he had everything under control. He was the kind of man people whispered about in meetings. Billionaire, real estate king, tech investor. The name Reed sat in shiny letters on top of glass towers downtown. Drivers opened doors for him, assistants rushed behind him with tablets and coffee, and news articles called him a genius. None of that mattered on the night his wife did not wake up again. The hospital room smelled like sharp cleaning liquid and something warm that he never forgot. His wife Emily lay on the bed, her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, her face pale and tired, but her smile soft when the nurse placed the first tiny baby in his arms. Triplets, the doctor had said with a laugh that tried to sound light. 3 boys, you're going to be busy, Mr. Reed. Nathan had laughed too, even though his hands were shaking so much that the nurse had to help him hold the first baby, then the second, then the third. 3 tiny faces, 3 little mouths opening and closing like baby birds, 3 sets of fingers no bigger than matchsticks curling around his thumb. We did it, Emily whispered. You see them, Nate, they're perfect. He leaned over, kissed her damp forehead, and told her yes, they were perfect, they were everything. He never imagined that those would be almost the last words he would hear from her. At first the room was noisy, full of nurses and beeping machines and soft cries. Then people started moving faster, calling each other, saying things he did not understand. Her pressure is dropping. Call anesthesia. We're losing her. The sound of one long flat beep cut through all the others like a knife. Someone took the bobbies from his arms. Someone pulled him back out of the way. He called her name once, then again, louder. No answer. His wife's hand slipped out of his. Later, a doctor with tired eyes sat in front of him and used words like complication and too much bleeding, and we did everything we could. None of those words helped. Emily was gone, just like that. One moment she was laughing weakly and asking if he had chosen names yet. The next, the bed was empty and he was standing in a hallway with his own heartbeat roaring in his ears. That same doctor took him to a different room, where 3 clear plastic cribs stood in a row under soft blue lights. Tiny bodies lay under warm blankets, tubes taped to their hands and noses. They had a hard start, the doctor said quietly. Their brains didn't get enough oxygen at first. We'll know more as they grow, but there may be long-term damage. Nathan stared at them, his hands numb. What kind of damage? He forced out. Will they be okay? The doctor did not answer right away. He pointed to a chart, talked about brain signals, muscle tone, reflexes. He finally said, we think they have a kind of movement disorder. It's called cerebral palsy. It affects how the brain tells the muscles what to do. Your sons may never walk or run like other children. They might always need help to move. Nathan shook his head then, not because he didn't believe the doctor, but because his mind could not hold one more loss in the same night. He had already lost his wife. He refused to lose the picture in his head of three boys racing down a hallway, laughing, fighting over toys, jumping into his arms. "Do whatever you have to do," he said, his voice hard. "I'll pay for the best care, just help them." The weeks after that blurred together. Nathan lived between his office and the hospital. He signed documents without reading them, sat in meetings he did not hear, and kept his phone on loud every second in case the hospital called. When the Bobbies were finally strong enough to go home, they did not go to a small apartment or a quiet little house. They went to a mansion with tall gates, a long driveway, and a staff of people who knew how to move around their billionaire boss without making eye contact. The nursery upstairs looked like a dream, with 3 tiny cribs, 3 soft mobiles, 3 sets of matching clothes stacked in drawers. Nathan had designed it with Emily months before when they thought life was simple. Now he walked into that room alone and felt like the floor might open under him. The boys grew, but not the way other children did. They smiled late, they rolled over late. When other toddlers were pulling themselves up on furniture and taking shaky baby steps, his sons lay in special chairs with straps, their legs stiff, their knees refusing to bend. Therapists came every day. They brought bright-colored toys and big foam blocks and charts full of exercises. They bent the boys' legs and moved their arms and spoke in calm, patient voices. "We're making small gains," one therapist said after months of work. "Look, his head control is better, his hands are less tight." Small gains, tiny steps that did not look like steps at all. Nathan poured money into treatment like water. He hired the best specialists, ordered custom wheelchairs, flew in experts from other states. He watched every session at first, hoping for a miracle in every stretch and every little movement. When nothing big happened, he started to step back. It hurt too much to hope and be disappointed every day. Work became his hiding place. Deals and contracts and numbers were easier than tiny sons who stared at the ceiling while their legs refused to move. People called him cold. They said the tragedy had turned him into a machine. They did not see him sitting alone in the dark nursery at night, holding one small hand at a time and whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm trying, I don't know how to fix this." As the boys got older, they needed more than therapy. They needed people, someone to feed them, dress them, change them, play with them, talk to them when he was gone. The first nanny came with a thick folder of certificates and glowing references. She lasted 3 weeks. At first she was sweet, smiling, calling the boys honey and sweetheart. Then one day a camera Nathan had placed in the hallway caught her sighing loudly as she pushed their wheelchairs. "You're so heavy," she muttered. "Why do I always get the hard jobs?" She thought no one heard. But the next day a nurse found a small bruise on one boy's shoulder where a strap had been pulled too tight. Nathan fired her that afternoon. The second nanny stayed longer. The third took pictures of the boys while they slept and posted them online with a sad story to get sympathy likes. When Nathan's lawyer showed him the post, his face went white with anger. That woman was gone before sunset. By the time they reached nanny number 11, the house staff whispered that the boys were cursed. They said no one could last with them. "It's not the children," the head housekeeper muttered once in the kitchen when she thought Nathan was out of earshot. "It's the weight, the sadness. It sits on this house like a cloud." Nathan heard that and added more cameras. If people could not be trusted, machines could. He had cameras in the living room, in the playroom, in the hallway by the boys' room. He did not put them in the bathroom or the boys' bedroom out of respect, but almost everywhere else could be seen from his phone. When the agency sent the next candidate, they warned him. "She's young," the woman from the agency said. "Not much experience with special needs. But she's patient and she really wants this job." Nathan almost refused. He did not want young and not much experience. He wanted perfect, but perfect had betrayed him 11 times already. "Send her," he said shortly. "If she's not right, she's gone, no long contracts." The girl who walked into his house on a rainy Monday morning did not look like the others. She was shorter, with dark curls pulled into a low bun and warm brown eyes that scanned the room like she was learning it by heart. Her name was Joy. She wore simple jeans, a plain blouse, and flat shoes, no heavy perfume, no thick makeup. Her hands were rough like she was used to work. She swallowed nervously when she saw Nathan, but she did not drop her eyes to the floor like many people did around him. She just held her bag a little tighter. "Mr. Reed," she said softly. "Thank you for seeing me. You understand what this job is?" Nathan asked. He did not waste time. "My sons have a serious condition. They can't walk. They need help with almost everything." "The agency told me," she said, "but I would like to meet them if that's okay." That answer surprised him. Some nannies talked only about pay and hours. Joy was more interested in the boys. He led her to the living room, where 3 small wheelchairs stood in a row in front of the big window. The triplets sat in them, dressed in matching blue shirts and gray sweatpants. Their hair was neatly cut, their faces clean. Their legs, thin and stiff, stuck out in front of them, strapped so they would not slide down. They were 3 years old now, but their bodies still looked smaller than other kids their age. One boy's head tilted slightly to the side. Another kept his hands close to his chest. The third stared at the light on the wall. "These are my sons," Nathan said quietly. "This is Jonah. This is Caleb." "This is Micah." Joy did not rush. She walked over slowly, knelt in front of them one by one, and said their names very gently. "Hi, Jonah," she murmured. "Hi, Caleb. Hi, Micah. My name is Joy. I know I'm new, but if you let me, I want to be your friend." Nathan watched closely. The boys did not smile, but he saw Jonah's eyes flicker toward her face just for a second. It was more reaction than he had seen with some other nannies. "They don't talk much," he warned. "They make sounds sometimes. They understand more than they can show, or so the therapist says." Joy nodded. "I grew up helping my aunt with foster kids," she said. "Some of them couldn't move like other children, some couldn't speak, but they still felt everything. They knew when people were kind, they knew when people gave up on them." Something sharp poked in Nathan's chest. "I haven't given up on them," he said quickly. "Of course not," Joy said, standing up. "You hired help, you brought in therapists. That's love too, it's just. Sometimes love also means seeing what they can do, not only what they can't." He didn't answer, he just pointed to the cameras in the corners of the room. "I watch everything," he told her. "If you raise your voice at them, if you leave them alone too long, if I see anything I don't like, you're gone. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Joy said. Her face did not close up in anger. She did not roll her eyes. She looked almost sad. "They've been hurt before, haven't they?" Nathan didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. The next few days he tested her. He watched the app at work, in the car at night. He saw Joy wheel the boys to the window to show them the trees moving in the wind. He saw her put on music and move their arms up and down in time with the beat, laughing softly when one of them let out a small sound that almost sounded like a giggle. He watched her sit on the floor with picture books, describing every single page even when the boy's eyes wandered away. "This is a dog," she would say. "He's running, look how fast he is. One day you're going to chase something fast too. Maybe not like other kids, but in your own way." One afternoon, after a very hard meeting, Nathan opened the app expecting to find her checking her phone or leaving the boys in front of the TV. Instead, he saw Joy kneeling beside Jonah's wheelchair, gently massaging his legs like the therapist had taught her. "Left leg up, hold down," she said, smiling. "Right leg up, hold down. You're strong, buddy. I can feel it." Jonah's face was blank, but his fingers twitched. That night, for the first time in a long time, Nathan slept without replaying the hospital sounds in his head. Weeks passed. The boys started making more sounds, tiny laughs, little whines that were not pain, just normal complaints that any 3-year-old might make. Joy clapped for everything. "That's it," she would cheer. "You're talking to me." "Say it again," Nathan told himself. It was nothing special. Kids made noise. That didn't mean their condition had changed. Still, something about her made it harder for him to stay numb. One morning, the main therapist pulled him aside after a session. "Have you noticed anything different?" she asked. "They seem a little more alert. Their legs are less stiff than before." "Maybe it's the new stretching routine," Nathan said. "Or some new medicine. Don't read too much into it." He did not want his heart to raise its head again, only to be pushed back down. Then came the business trip that dragged him away. It was a huge deal, one his board had begged him to take. "If we land this, it's another billion in assets," his partner said. "You have to go in person, they respect that." Nathan looked at his calendar, then at the therapy schedule on the fridge. "It's only 3 days, he told himself. "I'll be back before the weekend. Joy can handle it." He called her into his study before he left. "I'm installing one more camera in the living room," he said, not bothering to soften it. "It's a better angle, you won't even notice it." "I figured you'd have cameras," Joy said with a small shrug. "You're a careful man." "Careful," he repeated. "That's one word for it. Listen, while I'm gone, keep their routine. No big experiments. Don't try to move them without support. They can get hurt." Joy's eyes slid toward the stairs where the boys' room was. "Mr. Reed," she said slowly, "they're stronger than you think. I can feel it when I move their legs. They push back sometimes, not much, but it's there." His jaw tight. "The doctors said walking is very unlikely," he replied. "We don't play with what's unlikely, we protect them from false hope." "Is it false hope?" she asked quietly, "or fear?" The question hit him like a slap. For a moment he thought about firing her right there for speaking to him like that, but there was no anger in her face. Only concern and something else, determination. "Just do your job," he said stiffly. "Feed them, care for them, keep them safe, that's all." "Yes, sir," Joy answered. "I'll keep them safe." On the plane, Nathan tried to think only about numbers and contracts, but images kept sliding into his mind. Jonah's fingers twitching against Joy's hand, Caleb's eyes following her when she walked across the room, Micah making a sound like a giggle when she accidentally sneezed and then laughed at herself. At the hotel, he went straight into meetings that lasted hours. He smiled, he shook hands, he argued, he made rich men nod slowly and think. He signed papers. Everyone called the day a success. That night, alone in his room with a half-eaten room service tray on the table, the silence felt heavier than it did at home. He loosened his tie and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the city below. People were walking, crossing streets, holding hands, jogging. It was such a normal thing, putting one foot in front of the other. He wondered if his boys would ever feel what the weight of their own body felt like on their legs. His chest hurt. That was when he remembered the new camera. He picked up his phone, opened the security app, and tapped the living room view. He did not expect anything. Maybe the boys would be watching a cartoon. Maybe Joy would be picking up toys. Instead, he found those 3 empty chairs. The first thing his brain screamed was danger. Empty wheelchairs meant someone had moved them. What if one of the boys had slipped and fallen? What if they were on the floor, hurt out of the camera's view? He panicked, zooming in, scanning every corner of the room. Then he saw them, and the whole story of his life, the one built on doctors' words and fear and grief, started to crack. They were upright, their feet were on the ground, their bodies shook like leaves in a storm, sweat shone on their foreheads. In front of them, Joy stood with her arms open wide, her face wet with tears, her voice loud and steady. Even through the tiny phone speaker he could hear snatches of her words. "You can do it, one more step, I've got you, I won't let you fall." Jonah dragged one foot forward and nearly toppled, but Joy darted in, catching him with one arm while never taking her eyes off the others. "That's it," she cried. "You're doing it, look at you." Caleb lifted his heel. Micah laughed, a short, wild sound, and leaned toward her. It was clumsy and slow and nothing like the smooth walking of kids in park videos, but it was movement, real movement, more than he had ever seen. Nathan's heart slammed so hard he could hear it in his ears. Part of him wanted to shout at her through the phone to tell her to stop before they got hurt. Another part could not look away. "How long has she been doing this?" he whispered to the empty room. He scrubbed back on the footage, fingers shaking, going to the start of the recording. There she was an hour earlier, kneeling on the rug, stretching their legs, talking to them like a coach before a race. There were stickers on the floor in a crooked line, bright little stars leading from the wheelchairs to her feet. "Follow the stars," she said in one clip, tapping the stickers. "One step, one star, I believe in you. Your legs are listening, they just need practice." The more he watched, the more his world tilted. Joy had not only been caring for his sons. She had been training them quietly, gently, every day while he hid in his office and told himself nothing could change. And now here they were, stepping toward her, risking falls, risking failure, but moving. At that exact moment in the live feed, Jonah's foot caught on the edge of the rug. He pitched forward, his arms flailing. Nathan's heart jumped into his throat. Joy lunged to catch him, but the camera angle shifted as one of the boys bumped the stand. The image jolted, blurring for a second. The last thing Nathan saw was Jonah's body tipping, Joy's hand reaching, and Micah taking another shaky step with a wild, terrified smile on his face. The feed stuttered and froze on that half-second of chaos. Nathan stared at the still image, every muscle in his body tight. Had Jonah fallen? Had she caught him? Were his sons safe or lying on the floor right now because someone dared to hope too much? His thumb stabbed at the screen, trying to refresh the view, but the app spun, loading, the signal struggling. Far above a sleeping city in a hotel room that suddenly felt too small, a billionaire who thought he had already survived the worst pain in his life realized he might still lose more. This time, he could not blame doctors or fate. This time, it would be because he trusted the wrong person or because he refused to believe in a miracle when it was happening right in front of him. As the image stayed frozen and the app refused to load the next second of truth, Nathan grabbed his jacket with shaking hands and stormed toward the door, his mind made up to do something that would change all of their lives forever. Nathan did not remember crossing the hotel lobby or getting into the car. He only remembered the sound of his own heartbeat and the image of Jonah frozen mid-fall on his phone screen as the driver asked, "Sir, are you all right?" And he snapped, "Airport. Now," in a voice that made the man grip the steering wheel tighter without asking any more questions. And while the city lights streaked by outside the window, the same 2 thoughts fought inside his head like wild animals. They could be hurt, and she lied to me. By the time the plane took off, his hands still shook, not from fear of flying but from the picture his mind kept replaying: 3 little boys with shaky legs, a line of bright star stickers on the floor, Joy's arms open and ready, her face full of tears and fire. He should have felt proud. He should have felt grateful. Instead, he felt something fiercer, heavier, like anger and fear mixed together. Because if there was even a chance his sons could move like that, why had nobody told him? Why had the doctors spoken like doors were closed forever? Why had Joy taken it into her own hands to push them, to risk them falling without asking him? The plane ride home was a blur of people in suits, tiny screens showing movies he could not watch, and a flight attendant asking if he needed anything while he stared at his phone, hitting refresh on the camera feed every few minutes. The connection had come back after that first frozen second, but the picture had changed. The wheelchairs were back in their place. The boys were seated again, cheeks flushed, hair damp with sweat, their heads drooping with tiredness. Joy was kneeling in front of them, wiping their foreheads with a soft towel and speaking softly, her hands gentle as she adjusted their straps. No broken bones, no blood, no bruises he could see. Still his jaw stayed tight as stone. Every now and then one of the boy's legs twitched, as if it still remembered the strange new work it had done. At one point, Caleb's foot dragged a little against the footrest, like it wanted to push down, and Joy noticed. Instead of celebrating in a loud way, she just smiled, leaned in, and whispered something that the camera did not catch, words that made Caleb's eyes turn toward her for a second before he let out a tiny sound that might have been a laugh or might have been something new. Nathan clenched his hand around the phone until his knuckles went white. "You're not their doctor," he muttered under his breath at the screen. "You're a maid, you had one job, keep them safe. But if keeping them safe meant never letting them try, never letting them push, never letting them risk even one small fall, then what kind of safety was that?" The question crawled into his mind and refused to leave. When the plane finally landed and his car pulled into the long driveway hours later, dawn was just starting to brush the sky with pale gray. The tall iron gates opened as if nothing in the world was different, the smooth stones of the driveway shining with a thin layer of early morning dew. The house sat ahead like a silent palace, lights off in most of the windows. Only one soft golden light glowed from the downstairs hallway, the night light they always left on so the house would never be completely dark for the boys. Nathan stepped out of the car before it fully stopped, ignoring the driver's offer to carry his bag. It thumped to the ground as he marched to the front door, keyed in his code, and pushed it open. Every sound seemed louder in the quiet house. The small click of the lock, the creak of the hinge, the soft hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. He could smell coffee that had been brewed hours ago and the faint, clean scent of laundry detergent that always clung to the air here. His shoes were too loud on the tile, so he kicked them off and walked barefoot across the cool floor, each step bringing him closer to the living room, to the place where everything he knew had been broken and rebuilt without his permission. The living room looked neat, almost like no one had ever tried to turn it into a tiny training ground. The star stickers were mostly gone. He could see only one or two stuck near a chair leg and half hidden by the edge of the rug. The wheelchairs stood in their usual spot, side by side, facing the TV. Toys were stacked in bins, blankets folded over the back of the couch. The triplets were not there. For a moment his stomach clenched again. Then he heard it upstairs, a soft song, off-key but warm, floating down from the boys' room, mixed with the quiet squeak of wheels moving and the low murmur of a woman's voice. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. He paused outside the bedroom door, which was cracked open just enough for him to see inside. Joy was there, her hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing a simple sleep shirt and soft pants, slippers on her feet. Her eyes had dark circles under them, like she had not slept much. The boys were in their cribs, no longer tiny baby cribs but low beds with high rails and soft bumpers to keep them safe. Jonah lay on his back, fingers wrapped tightly around a small stuffed bear. Caleb rolled slightly to one side, his legs propped with pillows, his mouth open just a little as he breathed. Micah lay flat, his eyes half closed, one hand resting near his cheek. Their cheeks still had a strange new color in them, like the pink that comes after a run in cold air. Their legs were covered by light blankets, but from where Nathan stood, he could see faint redness around their knees and ankles where muscles had clearly been used. Joy moved from bed to bed, checking straps, smoothing hair, humming a soft tune that sounded like something old, maybe from her childhood. "You were warriors today," she whispered as she pulled Jonah's blanket up. "Your legs spoke. I'm so proud of you. Tomorrow we rest. We don't want to make your muscles angry, okay?" She chuckled softly at her own joke. "And don't tell your dad yet. He'll see when it's time." The words hit Nathan like a cold wave. "Don't tell your dad yet." He pushed the door open fully. The song stopped. Joy's head snapped up, her eyes widening as she saw him in the doorway. For a second her face showed everything: surprise, guilt, worry, and something like stubbornness all at once. "Mr. Reed," she breathed, "you're back early." "Obviously," he said, his voice low and tight. "Step out of the room now." She glanced at the boys, then back at him. "They're asleep," she said quietly. "Please keep your voice down. Jonah has trouble going back to sleep if he wakes in the middle." "Out," he repeated, not raising his voice but making it sharp. Every muscle in Joy's shoulders tensed, but she nodded, tucking the blanket around Micah one last time before slipping past Nathan into the hallway. He closed the bedroom door gently behind him, not because he felt calm but because he knew slamming it would scare the boys. No matter how angry he was, he refused to hurt them even by accident. In the hallway the nightlight cast a soft glow on the pale walls. A framed photo of Emily smiled down at them from a little shelf, her eyes full of life the camera had captured long before any of this pain. Joy's gaze flickered to the picture, then back to Nathan's face. "You installed another camera," he said, stabbing the air with his finger toward the living room downstairs. "You knew I could see you, and still you did that." "What were you thinking?" Joy swallowed hard. I was thinking about them, she said, about what they could do, about the chance that the doctors might have been wrong about at least one thing. Wrong, his laugh was short and harsh. They're experts, they ran tests, they showed me charts, they said walking was almost impossible. They said almost, Joy replied softly, her eyes not leaving his. Almost is not the same as never. Her words hung between them like a wire. Nathan shook his head. You could have hurt them, he said. If Jonah had fallen, his voice cracked on his son's name and he swallowed it back, clenching his jaw. You should have asked me, you had no right to push them like that. Joy took a tiny step forward then stopped herself, gripping her own hands together. With respect, sir, she said, choosing each word carefully, if I had asked you would you have said yes? Silence answered her. Nathan's throat felt dry. He thought of the way he had shut the therapist down when she mentioned more aggressive programs or risk and reward. He thought of the times he had walked out of the room when someone suggested trying standing frames or different methods that might be uncomfortable at first. He thought of how safe it had felt to believe there was nothing more that could be done, because then if his sons never walked, it would not be his fault. I'm not your enemy, Joy whispered. I know it probably feels like I broke your rules. I'm sorry I scared you, that was never my intention. I should have told you what I was doing, but I didn't do it because I wanted to show off or disobey you. I did it because I saw something in them, something strong, something ready. She took a shaky breath. I've seen this before, Nathan frowned. What do you mean you've seen this before, my little brother, she said quietly. Back home, his name is Jordan. When he was born, the doctors said some of the same things about him that they said about your boys. Movement disorder. Maybe he'll never walk. My mom cried for weeks. She did her best, but there was not much money, not many good therapists. I was 12 when I started helping with his exercises. They gave us a sheet of papers with pictures of stretches. We did them every day on an old rug on the floor. For years it looked like nothing was changing. His legs stayed stiff, his feet turned in. People said my mom was wasting her time, but she refused to stop. When he was 4, a new doctor came to the clinic. She watched him then said, there is more inside him than we thought, but someone has to believe enough to push him. It took another 2 years. Do you know when he took his first step? Her eyes shone now, but not only with tears, there was pride there too. On a day when everyone except my mom and me had given up. We were in the hallway and he wanted a balloon that had floated just out of reach. He pulled himself along the wall and somehow his foot moved forward 1 step. He fell right after and my mom screamed because she was scared. But we also laughed and cried because it meant his body could do it. It just needed help. Nathan stared at her. And now, he asked harshly, does he run marathons? Did a miracle fix everything? He still walks differently, Joy said simply. He falls sometimes. He uses a cane when he's tired, but he walks. He goes to school. He carries his own backpack. He dances in our tiny living room on Saturdays when my mom plays her old music. None of that would have happened if everyone listened only to the first doctors and never tried more. The hallway light hummed softly above them. Somewhere in the room behind the door, one of the boys let out a tiny sleepy sigh. Nathan's heart twisted. This is not a village hallway, he said slowly. This is my house, my sons, you don't get to experiment on them. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. Joy flinched. I'm not experimenting, she said. I used the same stretching plan your therapist gave us. I followed the safety rules about support. I kept pillows near. I never let them walk near anything sharp or hard. I stayed close enough to catch them. The only difference is I added hope. I added the belief that they could try. Her voice shook on the last word, but she did not look away. I saw Jonah push against my hand last week when I moved his leg. Not a reflex, a push. I saw Caleb try to lift his heel off the cushion when he watched children running in a video. I saw Micah laugh when I made stepping motions with his feet and told him stories about races. They were ready to try. They are 3, Nathan shouted in a whisper, his anger fighting with fear. Their bones are soft, their muscles are weak. One wrong move can hurt them, she agreed quietly. But never moving at all can hurt them too. Just in a slower way. I'm not saying they will suddenly run around the yard. I'm not promising a magical cure. I'm saying their bodies gave little signs and I followed them. I should have told you, you're their father, you deserve to know everything. She pressed her lips together as tears filled her eyes. I was afraid you would shut it down before it even started. Nathan felt the air go thick. On the wall beside them, a small mark showed where one of the boys had once thrown a toy that hit the paint. He could still remember that day, how shocked he had been at the sudden burst of anger from Micah, how secretly glad that his son cared enough to be mad. Someone once told him that anger meant life, meant a person still wanted something. Fear now felt oddly like that anger, heavy but also proof that he wanted more for them than stillness and straps, if they had fallen. He repeated, but the words sounded weaker this time. I would have caught them, Joy whispered. And if I failed, I would have called the doctor and told you the truth. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. I'm asking you to watch carefully and see what's really happening. You saw the video, didn't you? You saw them move. Images flashed in his mind again, Jonah dragging his foot, Caleb lifting his heel, Micah's wild, free laugh. Nathan squeezed his eyes shut for a second. The safe thing? The safe story he had told himself for years was that nothing big would ever change, that all he could do was keep them comfortable. Safe in their chairs, safe in their room, safe in their soft little world. If he believed Joy, everything would change. Because if there was a chance they could move more than the doctors thought, then he had to do more. And if he had to do more, he also had something new to lose. Not just their safety, their hope, his own heart. "You're fired," he almost said, the word crawling up his throat like an automatic line he'd used too many times before, but something else came out instead. "Tomorrow," he said stiffly, "we call their therapist. You will show her exactly what you did today. If she says this is too dangerous, it stops. If she says there's a way to do this that is safe, we talk. Until then, no more steps without support frames. No more pushing them beyond what their bodies can handle. Do you understand?" Joy stared at him, shocked. She had clearly expected to be thrown out on the street before sunrise. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "I understand. And another thing," he added, his voice rough. "You do not keep secrets about my sons from me, not ever again. If you see something, you tell me. If you want to try something new, you tell me first. Hope is not something you hide." "I'm sorry," she said again, tears now sliding down her cheeks. "I won't hide anything again. Thank you for giving this a chance at all." Nathan didn't answer. He just turned, opened the boys' bedroom door and stepped inside. Joy stayed in the hall, wiping her face with the back of her hand. The room was full of soft breathing and the sweet, warm smell of children. Nathan walked to Jonah's bed first. Up close he could see more signs of what had happened that day: slight redness around his knees under the blanket, a tiny scratch on one shin where maybe his leg had brushed the rug. He pulled the blanket down gently and laid his fingers against Jonah's calf. The muscle felt strange under his hand, not as stiff, not as heavy, almost awake. Jonah did not open his eyes, but his toes curled just a tiny bit as if they recognized the touch. "Hey buddy," Nathan whispered. "What are you doing to me, huh? Making me scared and proud at the same time." He moved to Caleb, then Micah, feeling the same new tension in their legs, the same small hints of change. Each time he touched them, his heart squeezed a little tighter. He stood there for a long time, watching their chests rise and fall. The memory of Emily lying still in that hospital bed came back, sharp and painful, but this time something different came with it. Her voice laughing as she said, "They're going to be trouble, Nate. I can feel it. They're going to surprise you." He bent his head and pressed a kiss to each boy's forehead, a silent promise forming in his mind, not yet ready to put into words. When he stepped back into the hallway, Joy was gone, probably downstairs to clean up or cry in private. He went to his room, lay down fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling until the sky outside his window turned from gray to soft pink. Sleep did not come, but something else did, a plan, or at least the start of one. In the morning, the house woke slowly. The cook moved around the kitchen. The housekeeper opened curtains. Sunlight spilled down the staircase. Nathan, who usually left early for work, stayed home and drank his coffee at the kitchen counter, the mug warm in his hands. When Joy walked in with the boys in their wheelchairs, all three dressed in fresh clothes, hair combed, faces washed, she stopped short at the sight of him. The triplets' eyes moved around the room, slower than other kids but more focused than they had been months ago. Jonah's gaze landed on his father's face, then slid away, then came back again as if drawn by an invisible string. "Good morning, Mr. Reed," Joy said carefully. "They already had their first feed. I was going to take them to the playroom." "In a minute," Nathan said. He set his mug down and walked over. "I want to say good morning first." He knelt so he was eye level with them, one by one. "Morning, soldiers," he said softly. "I heard you had a busy day yesterday." Jonah's lips twitched. Caleb's fingers flexed on the armrest. Micah made a small sound in his throat. Nathan swallowed hard. "Today we're going to have visitors," he continued, forcing his voice to stay calm. "Your therapist is coming early. We're going to show her what you've been doing. If she says we can make a new plan, we'll do it together. No more surprises, okay?" They did not answer, of course, but something in the way they watched his face made him feel like the words mattered anyway. An hour later, the therapist arrived, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Lawson with kind eyes behind square glasses and a no-nonsense way of speaking. She had been working with the boys since they came home from the hospital. She had seen every little gain and every plateau. When Nathan explained in clipped sentences that he wanted her to watch something and tell him if it was safe, she listened without interrupting, then followed him to the living room where Joy stood waiting, looking as if she wished the floor would open and swallow her. "Show her," Nathan said, nodding toward Joy. "Exactly what you did yesterday, but we stop the moment you feel anything is off, and if Dr. Lawson tells you to stop, you stop." Joy nodded, wiping her palms on her jeans. "Yes, sir." Setting up took time. They started with the simple things: stretches, joint movements, slow, careful bending of legs and hips. Dr. Lawson watched closely, sometimes touching a knee or ankle, sometimes asking the boys to respond to her voice. "Lift your toes, good, relax, can you feel this?" Little things, but she seemed pleased. "They're looser than last month," she remarked once. "I was going to mention it in our next review." Then Joy added her part. She took out a small roll of star stickers from her pocket. I used these, she said, her voice small. I put them on the floor like a path. She placed 3 stars on the rug a little distance from the wheelchairs, then a few more leading toward where she planned to stand. They like shiny things, she added quietly. It gives them something to aim for, and I talk to them the whole time so they know they're not alone. Nathan watched, arms crossed so tightly over his chest that his shoulders hurt. His heart screamed that this was too much, too risky, but he stayed. The boys were transferred from their chairs to standing frames first as usual so their weight was supported. Their legs slid into special braces that kept them from bending too far while straps held their bodies upright. Their heads lolled a little at first, then steadied. They had done this many times before under the therapist's guidance. The next step was the new part. Joy knelt in front of Jonah, met his eyes, and smiled. "You remember the stars, right?" she whispered. "We're not going to do as much as yesterday, just a tiny bit, just to show the doctor what you can do." Jonah's eyes flickered toward the stickers, very slowly, with Joy and Dr. Lawson both holding his frame. They shifted his weight. "Left foot," Joy said, "just a little, see if you can help me." At first it looked like nothing was happening, but then his toes curled, his heel lifted a fraction of an inch, and his foot dragged just enough that it moved closer to the first star. "There," Dr. Lawson breathed. "Do you see that, Mr. Reed? That's not a reflex, that's voluntary." Nathan's chest felt tight. "Do it again," Dr. Lawson urged gently. "But slow, very slow." They did. Each tiny shift was careful, watched, guarded. No wild steps this time, no letting go. Caleb and Micah took turns, each showing the same small signs of effort, the same stubborn little pushes against gravity. By the time they were done, all 3 boys were sweating and sleepy. Joy's face shone with pride and fear mixed together. "That's enough," Dr. Lawson said firmly. "We stop here today." She helped Joy ease the boys back into their wheelchairs, adjusting their legs and wiping their faces. Then she turned to Nathan. For a long moment she just looked at him, as if deciding how honest she dared to be. "You should have told me," she said finally to Joy. "But I also should have listened more to the small changes I saw instead of assuming they meant nothing." She turned back to Nathan. "Mr. Reed, what she did yesterday was risky without proper support and planning. They could have been hurt if she'd lost her grip for even a second. I don't approve of that part." Nathan nodded once, feeling a grim sort of satisfaction. Then she continued. "However," she added, "what I saw just now tells me something important. Your sons have more motor potential than we first believed. The old tests were not wrong, but they were not the whole story. Their brains have made new pathways. Their muscles respond better now. With the right program, intensive, careful, fully supervised, they might reach a higher level of movement than we expected. Maybe not full, free walking like other children, but standing with help, stepping with assistance. Moving in ways that give them more independence." The room seemed to tilt. "So you're saying," Nathan began. "I'm saying there is a window here," Dr. Lawson said softly. "It won't stay open forever. If we're brave and smart, we can try to climb through. It will not be easy. They will cry sometimes. Their muscles will hurt. You will have to watch them struggle. And there is no promise of a perfect outcome, but there is a promise of more than what they have now." Her eyes softened. "The question is, are you willing to let them try?" The house fell into silence. Joy's hands twisted in front of her. The boys watched the grown-ups with sleepy curiosity. Nathan's mind raced. If he said no, everything would go back to how it was before, safe, still. He could tell himself he was protecting them. But every time he looked at their legs from now on, he would remember the feel of those muscles under his fingers last night, the slight tension that meant life. He said yes, he would be stepping into a storm. There would be tears, maybe setbacks, maybe injuries, but also maybe the sound of little feet on the floor one day. He thought of Emily again, of the way she had dreamed out loud about their sons climbing the stairs 2 at a time, sliding down the banister, racing each other to the front door when he came home. His throat burned. "We do it," he whispered, surprising himself. Then louder, "We try, but we do it right. No more unsupervised experiments. You design the program, doctor. You tell us what's safe, what's too much, when to rest. Joy follows your instructions exactly or she's out. I stay informed, no secrets." Dr. Lawson nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "That," she said, "is the best answer I could have hoped for." Joy let out a breath Nathan hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her shoulders sagged with relief, but her eyes shone like someone had lit a fire inside her. "I'll do everything you say," she promised. "I'll write it all down, I'll keep logs. You will also take care of yourself," Dr. Lawson cut in. "This kind of work is hard, you can't pour from an empty cup." That afternoon the house changed in small ways that felt huge to Nathan. The living room got a new item, a sturdy metal frame with straps and supports, a proper training tool ordered on rush delivery from a medical store once Dr. Lawson sent the link. The rug was rolled back to create a clearer path. Soft mats were placed along the floor near where the boys might one day step. The star stickers stayed, but now they were part of an official plan, not a secret path of hope. Nathan moved his laptop to the corner of the living room that day. Instead of hiding in his office, he worked where he could see everything. He still answered emails and took calls, but every time Joy and the boys started a new exercise, he muted himself and watched. It was hard to see them struggle, harder than he had expected. Their faces sometimes scrunched up in confusion or mild discomfort. Their legs trembled. They made frustrated sounds when their bodies did not move the way they wanted. But he also saw something else. Tiny smiles when they managed a shift without as much help, bright eyes when Joy clapped and cheered and put a sticker on their shirt as a reward, quiet pride on their faces when they finished their missions and got a story or song as a prize. That night after everyone went to bed, Nathan sat alone in the living room staring at the training frame. He walked over, placed his hands on the cool metal, and imagined his son standing there between the bars, gripping them with small hands, looking up at him. "I'm late," he whispered into the empty room. "I should have been the one to push first, not a stranger, not someone I had to threat with cameras. I should have." His voice broke. He pressed his forehead against the frame, the metal cold against his skin. "I'm sorry," he said, though he did not know if he was apologizing to his sons, to Emily, to himself, or even to Joy. The next few days settled into a new rhythm. Therapy in the morning, practice with the frame in the afternoon, rest and gentle play in between. Every small gain was written down. Jonah lifted heel 2 cm with verbal prompt. Caleb shifted weight left to right without crying. Micah laughed during step practice instead of whining. The boys began to associate the frame with something more than work. When they were wheeled into the living room and saw it, their eyes brightened just a little, and Micah started making an excited sound that made Joy grin. Not everything was easy. There were days when the boys were tired and cranky, when their legs stiffened more than usual and they refused to cooperate. There were days when Joy looked exhausted, her hair a mess, her patience stretched thin. There were moments when Nathan doubted again, when he wanted to call the whole thing off and wrap his sons in soft blankets forever. On one such afternoon, after an especially rough session where Jonah burst into tears and refused to try another shift, Nathan pulled Joy aside. "Maybe this is too much," he said quietly while Jonah sniffled in his chair, clutching his bear. "Maybe we're pushing them past their limit." Joy shook her head. "Kids cry when they learn to walk," she said gently. "Even ones without any disability. They fall, they get mad. Then they try again. We listen to their bodies, yes, we respect their pain, but we also don't stop forever after one bad day." Her voice softened. "It's like your work, isn't it? You've lost deals before, you've had days when everything went wrong. Did you stop being a businessman?" "That's different," he muttered. "I chose that, they didn't choose this." "You're right," she agreed. "They didn't, which is why they need someone to choose hope for them until they can choose it for themselves." Her words stuck in his mind long after she went back to the boys. That night, something small but important happened. Nathan was putting away some papers in his study when he heard laughter from the hallway, real laughter, high and bright. For a second he thought the TV was on, then he realized it was his sons. He stepped out quietly. At the end of the hall, near their bedroom door, Joy was crouched behind Micah's wheelchair, playing a silly game of peekaboo with a scarf. She would hide behind it, then drop it suddenly, making a goofy face. Each time Micah exploded in giggles, the sound bubbling out of him like water from a spring. Jonah and Caleb watched, their faces more serious, but even they had the hint of smiles around their mouths. The sound was so unexpected, so pure, that Nathan's eyes stung. He leaned against the wall, watching without announcing himself. His sons had laughed before, but it had always been small, short sounds. This was different, this was free. Then, as if sensing his presence, Jonah turned his head, saw his father, and did something he had never done before. He lifted one arm, shaky, uneven, but on purpose, and reached it out toward him. The movement was not big. His fingers wobbled midair, then dropped, but it was enough to make time slow for Nathan. In that small, reaching hand, he saw everything: need, trust, the desire to connect. Joy followed Jonah's gaze and saw Nathan too. She stepped back, giving space. "Looks like someone wants his dad," she said softly. For the first time in a long time, Nathan did not hang back. He walked forward, knelt beside the chair, and took Jonah's hand in his. "Hey buddy," he whispered, "I'm here." Jonah's fingers curled weakly around his. It was not a strong grip, but it was a choice. Nathan looked up and met Joy's eyes over the boy's shoulder. Something silent passed between them, a truce maybe, or the first fragile piece of trust. That night when the house was dark, Nathan opened the security app again, out of habit. The cameras showed quiet rooms, still hallways. The training frame stood alone in the living room, like a promise waiting to be kept. He switched off the app and set the phone down. For the first time since Emily's death, he did not feel crushed by the weight of what his sons could not do. He felt the pull of what they might do if he kept going. But storms do not pass just because someone has a hopeful day. The very next week, when things seemed to be going well, when the boys' log was filling up with small wins, and Dr. Lawson hinted that they might soon try 3 supported steps in a row, something happened that threatened to rip this fragile new life apart. It started with a phone call Nathan almost didn't answer. from a blocked number right in the middle of a training session where Jonah was taking his second assisted shift without crying. He picked up with an impatient "hello" and heard a cool, unfamiliar voice say, "Mr. Reed, this is Child Welfare Services. We received an anonymous report about possible neglect and unsafe physical practices involving your sons and their caregiver. We'll need to schedule an immediate home visit." The room spun. The triplets, the frame, Joy's focused face, all of it blurred at the edges of his vision. "I'm sorry, what?" he snapped. "Someone reported what? We can explain when we arrive," the voice said calmly. "It's standard procedure, we'll be there this afternoon." As the line went dead, Nathan stared at his phone, his heart pounding for a whole new reason. Someone was accusing him and Joy of hurting the very children he was finally learning how to fight for. And in a few hours, strangers with clipboards and serious faces would walk into his house, judge everything they saw, and decide whether he was a safe father or not. When Nathan ended the call, his hand was still holding the phone so tight his knuckles had gone white, and for a long second he could not hear anything except the loud thud of his own heartbeat in his ears, as the words "child welfare and neglect and unsafe practices" spun like sirens in his mind and painted horrible pictures of strangers walking into his home, looking at his sons like a case file instead of children, and maybe even taking them away. His first instinct was to protect, his second was to fight, and both crashed together so hard inside his chest that he felt almost dizzy. So he took a slow breath, forced his fingers to relax, and looked across the room at the three small faces watching him from their wheelchairs, their eyes a little tired from the morning session but calm, trusting, unaware that someone somewhere had decided to call them in danger. Joy had been standing behind Micah's chair, one hand on the backrest, her other hand holding a little roll of stickers, and when she saw his face change, the color drained out of hers. "What is it?" she asked, her voice low but tight because she knew the look of bad news when she saw it. She'd seen it too many times in hospitals with her brother. Nathan looked at the boys, then at her. He did not want to scare them, but he also knew there was no point in pretending nothing was wrong. "Child Welfare Services," he said quietly. "Someone made an anonymous report. They said there might be neglect here, that we might be doing unsafe physical things with the boys. They're coming this afternoon." Joy's hand slipped off the chair. The stickers fell to the floor with a soft rustle. Her eyes went huge. "What?" she whispered. "But that's not true. I'm careful. You're careful. The doctor is careful. Who would say that?" As soon as the question left her mouth, the answer flashed in Nathan's mind like a picture. The last nanny, the one who had been caught taking photos and posting them online for pity and likes, the one he had fired without ceremony after his lawyer found the account. She had left angry. Another image followed, house staff whispering in the kitchen about him being too strict, someone seeing a small training bruise and not understanding, a board member who thought he was distracted by his children and wanted to push him aside. Any of them could have picked up a phone and said just enough scary words to make an official pay attention. But it did not matter who had done it, not right now. What mattered was what would happen when those officials walked through his door and saw a house full of cameras, a new training frame, star stickers on the floor, and three little boys with thin legs and tired eyes. "It doesn't have to be true for them to check," Nathan said, forcing himself to stay calm because panic would help no one. "They just have to take it seriously. And they should, that's their job. They protect children who really are being hurt, but they don't know us. They don't know what this is. They will only see what we show them, so we need to be ready." Joy wrapped her arms around herself, almost hugging her own ribs. "Are they going to think I'm the one hurting them?" she asked in a shaky whisper. "I mean, I'm the one doing the exercises with them most of the day. What if they try to blame me?" Nathan's first instinct again was to say, "I'll protect you," but then he remembered that legally on paper, he was the one responsible for everything that happened in this house. And the thought that his own choices could put her in danger too made guilt burn behind his eyes. "They might ask you hard questions," he admitted. "They might ask me harder ones. They might ask the doctor, but listen to me, Joy, you are not alone in this. You didn't do any of this in secret after that night. We brought the therapist here. We made a plan. Everything you've done since then has been under her guidance. If anyone tries to pretend you were just randomly dragging them around the house, I will tell them the truth. You hear me? I will not let you stand alone in this." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, what do we do?" Nathan straightened, the businessman part of his brain sliding into place, but this time he was not planning a deal or a takeover. He was planning how to protect his family from being misunderstood. "First," he said, "we call Dr. Lawson. She needs to be here when they come. They'll trust another professional more than just me telling them a story." He grabbed his phone again and dialed the therapist's number with hands that were steadier now that he had something to do. When she answered, he did not waste time with small talk. He told her exactly what the caller had said. There was a pause on the line, then a quiet sigh. I was afraid of something like this, she admitted. Sometimes when neighbors or staff see new equipment or hear children cry during therapy, they misunderstand. It's not the first time I've seen it, but I'll be there. Tell me what time they gave you. They said this afternoon, Nathan replied. No exact time, just we'll be there. Of course, she said dryly. All right, I'll move some appointments around and get to your house as soon as I can. Do not stop your normal care. Don't suddenly hide equipment or act like you're guilty. That makes things worse. Just be honest. I'll bring copies of my notes and our updated treatment plan. We will show them this is medically supervised. Thank you, he said, surprising himself with how much those two words meant. We'll be ready. After he hung up, he made another call to his lawyer, a calm, older man named Mr. Keller who had helped with everything from contracts to privacy issues. It's probably just a standard visit, the lawyer said after listening carefully. But it's good you called. Do not lose your temper with them. Do not shout or threat to sue. That just makes them write down hostile parent in their notes. Answer questions clearly. Show them whatever they ask to see within reason. If they want medical records, you can tell them the therapist is bringing documentation. And if they say anything about removal or court orders, you call me back immediately. I won't let them take my sons, Nathan said, his voice low and dangerous. I know, the lawyer replied. And the best way to make sure of that is to stay calm and show them you're not a man with something to hide. You're a father doing everything you can. When the calls were done, the house felt strangely quiet, like it was holding its breath. The cook moved around the kitchen with softer steps than usual, clearly sensing something was wrong. The housekeeper came to ask if she should polish the silver in the dining room and ended up staying to tidy the living room instead, wiping down surfaces that were already clean, her eyes darting now and then to the training frame as if it might explain what was happening. Nathan could have ordered everyone to act normal, but the truth was, nothing about this felt normal. He walked over to the boys and knelt in front of them again. Their faces had picked up on the mood, even if they did not understand the words. Jonah looked worried in his quiet way, eyebrows slightly drawn. Caleb chewed on the corner of his shirt, something he did when he felt unsure. Micah made a questioning sound, his eyes moving back and forth between his father and Joy. Hey, Nathan said softly, forcing his voice to be gentle, not tight. Listen up, team. Some people are coming later to check on you. They want to make sure you're safe. That's their job. They don't know us yet, so they might look serious or talk in big words. But you are safe. I'm here. Joy is here. Dr. Lawson will be here. No one is going to touch you without us around, okay? He knew they couldn't answer in full sentences, but he watched their faces anyway. Jonah's hands relaxed a little. Caleb stopped chewing his shirt. Micah let out a soft that sounded more calm than before. Nathan leaned forward and touched each of their knees gently. If they ask you questions, he said, you just be yourselves. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to perform. You just have to be you. He almost laughed at himself. He was the one who needed that reminder more than they did. The hours until afternoon seemed both too long and too short. Dr. Lawson arrived around noon carrying a thick folder and a tablet. She was dressed a little more neatly than usual in a blazer over her usual blouse, and her hair was pinned back tightly. I hate these visits, she said quietly to Nathan in the hallway while Joy took the boys to the playroom for a rest. Not because they're always bad, they're necessary, they save some kids' lives, but in houses like this where there is love and fear and complicated medical stuff, they can cause a lot of stress. That's one word for it, Nathan replied dryly. Do you think they have the right to just walk in and judge us? They have the duty, she said. Whether they have the right depends on what they do with that power. Some are kind and careful, some are not. We'll see which kind you get today. She gave him a steady look. Remember, their first job is to see if the children are safe, so focus everything on that. Show them safety, show them care, show them the plan. You're not here to prove you're a perfect father. We're here to prove your sons are protected. The doorbell rang mid-afternoon, a sharp sound that made Joy jump even though she had been waiting for it. The cook peeked out of the kitchen, her hands still smelling faintly of onions and soup. The housekeeper hovered at the edge of the hallway, wiping her hands on her apron. Nathan straightened his shoulders, smoothed his shirt, and walked to the door like a man going into a boardroom where everyone wanted to see him fail. When he opened it, two people stood on the steps. One was a woman in her 40s with a neat bun, plain suit, and a heavy-looking bag over her shoulder. The other was a younger man with a tablet in his hand and a soft expression that did not quite reach his eyes because he was busy taking in details: the size of the house, the camera above the door, the car in the driveway. Mr. Reed, the woman asked, holding up an ID badge. I'm Ms. Green, and this is my colleague, Mr. Torres. We're from Child Welfare Services. Come in, Nathan said, stepping aside. He could feel the urge to say, you're wasting your time, but he swallowed it. Arguing before they even stepped inside would do nothing good. As they entered, their eyes moved quickly, noting the marble floor, the high ceilings, the framed photos on the walls. On one side, there was a picture from years ago of Nathan cutting a ribbon in front of a new building. On the other side, there was a picture from before everything fell apart. Him and Emily at a charity gala, her hand on her pregnant belly, both of them smiling like life would never hit them hard. Ms. Green's gaze lingered on the photo of Emily for a second, then moved on. "Thank you for letting us in on such short notice," she said. "As I explained on the phone, we received a report. We are required to investigate to make sure your children are safe and receiving appropriate care." "What exactly did the report say?" Nathan asked. He wanted to know what story he was fighting. Ms. Green glanced at her folder. It mentioned 3 disabled children in wheelchairs, loud crying during the day, and a caregiver forcing the children into painful physical positions. It also mentioned possible emotional neglect and an absent father more focused on his work than his sons. The words hit harder than he expected, probably because part of them had once been true. He had been absent, he had used work as a hiding place, he could not deny that. "The person wrote this and then hid their name," he said in a tight voice. "Anonymous calls are common," Mr. Torres said gently. "Sometimes they're made out of real concern, sometimes they're not. Our job is not to guess motives, our job is to see with our own eyes." Dr. Lawson stepped forward at that moment, holding her folder. "I'm their physical therapist," she said. "I've worked with the boys since they were discharged from the hospital. I'm here with my notes and treatment plans if that will help." Ms. Green's posture shifted slightly, not exactly relaxing but becoming more open. "That will be helpful," she said. "Thank you for being here, Ms. Lawson," she replied, "Doctor of Physical Therapy." "All right, Dr. Lawson," Ms. Green said. "We'd like to see the children first, then look at your records, then talk to the caregiver. And we'll have some questions for you, Mr. Reed." "Of course," Nathan said. He led them to the playroom, his steps slower now, wishing he could shield the boys from all of this. The playroom was bright and colorful, with low shelves, soft mats, and a large window that let in sunlight. The triplets sat side by side in their wheelchairs near a low table where Joy had arranged some blocks and simple toys. She had tried to keep things normal. A stack of picture books lay open and a silly cartoon played with the sound low on the TV in the corner. When the social workers entered, the boys' eyes went to them right away. Children always knew when strangers walked into their world. Ms. Green's face softened as she took in the scene. "Hello," she said in a gentler voice than she had used at the door. "You must be the triplets." She knelt to be closer to their eye level. "Can you tell me your names?" The boys stayed quiet. Jonah's fingers twisted in his shirt. Caleb looked at Joy as if asking if it was safe to answer. Micah made a small humming sound. Joy stepped closer. "They don't talk yet," she said softly. "But they understand. This is Jonah, this is Caleb, and this is Micah." She touched each shoulder as she spoke. Ms. Green nodded, her eyes now focused on the boys' faces, not the fancy house around them. "Do they interact?" she asked. "Do they respond to you?" "Yes," Joy said. She crouched beside Jonah and held out her hand. "Hey Jonah," she murmured. "Can you show Ms. Green your high five?" She tapped his palm gently. For a second nothing happened, then Jonah's fingers slowly lifted and patted her hand. It was clumsy and soft but clearly on purpose. Micah, not wanting to be left out, let out a little sound and leaned forward a bit in his chair. "You want one too?" Joy laughed. She went to him and repeated the motion. He slapped her hand with more energy, then giggled. Ms. Green's mouth curved into a small smile. "That's good," she said. "They seem bonded to you." She turned to look more closely at their legs. There were faint red marks around their knees and ankles where the braces sometimes pressed, and a small yellow-blue bruise on Caleb's shin from a toy that had bumped him during practice. "Do they often have marks on their legs?" she asked. Her tone was neutral, but the question made Joy's stomach drop. "Sometimes," Joy said quickly, but not too quickly, remembering she had promised not to hide. "From therapy, when we work their muscles, especially now that we're doing more standing. Dr. Lawson checks them every visit." "I do," Dr. Lawson confirmed, stepping closer. "I inspected them this morning. There are no signs of mistreatment. The bruises you see are small, shallow, and in places consistent with movement training. If you'd like, I can show you pictures of skin breakdown from actual abuse or neglect. These look nothing like that." Ms. Green nodded and scribbled something in her notebook. Mr. Torres moved quietly around the room, noting the clean equipment, the accessible layout, the fact that the boys' chairs were in good repair. "Can you show us the exercises you do?" he asked. There was mention of forcing them into painful positions. Joy flushed. "I never force them," she said, a bit of heat in her voice. Then she took a breath. "I encourage them. Sometimes they don't like it at first, like any child learning something hard, but I always stay within what the doctor says is safe." Dr. Lawson nodded. "We can demonstrate a simple part of the routine," she said. "Something light. They've already worked today and we don't want to overdo it just for a show." Nathan appreciated that. He didn't want his sons turned into a performance. Still, he knew they had to show something or the report's words would hang over them like a storm cloud. They wheeled the boys into the living room where the training frame stood. Ms. Green and Mr. Torres followed, watching everything with quiet eyes. The rest of the staff kept out of the way, hovering near doorways but not entering. The room felt different now, like a stage where one wrong move could change everything. They started with the most basic exercise. Jonah was helped into the standing frame, strapped safely with both Joy and Dr. Lawson at his sides, hands on the bars ready to support him. His legs slid into place, his feet secured on the pads. Ms. Green watched intently, ready to stop things if it looked unsafe. "Hi, buddy," Joy whispered to Jonah. "We're just going to show them a little of what you can do, okay? No big missions today." She stuck a star sticker on the bar in front of him. "Touch the star," she said. Jonah's hand slowly rose and patted the sticker. His fingers trembled, but he made contact. "Good," Dr. Lawson said. "Now we shift weight." They gently guided his hips so more weight went onto one leg. "Left heel up just a little," Joy murmured. Jonah's heel lifted a tiny bit. It was almost nothing, but when you were used to stillness it was a miracle. Caleb got a turn, then Micah. Each time the social workers watched quietly. Mr. Torres made notes on his tablet, his face thoughtful. Ms. Green asked questions. "How often? How long? How do they react afterward? Do they sleep, cry, laugh?" Joy and Dr. Lawson answered each one with honest detail. Nathan stayed near the wall, arms folded, watching both his sons and the faces of the people who could cause so much trouble with a single bad report. At one point, when Joy loosened Micah's straps to lower him back into his chair, his foot slipped on the pad for a moment and he wobbled. Her arm shot out, catching him before he could fall. It was so fast, so automatic that even Ms. Green relaxed a little. "You've done this often," she observed. "Yes," Joy said, "every day, carefully." After the demonstration, they all sat. The boys were given their favorite soft toys and some juice. Ms. Green and Mr. Torres moved to the dining table with Nathan and Dr. Lawson while Joy stayed within sight, chatting softly with the triplets, her smile still there but thinner now, stretched by worry. "From what I've seen so far," Ms. Green said, "the physical exercises are supervised and within a reasonable range for their condition. The marks on their legs are not worrying to me given the context, and the boys seem attached to both of you." Nathan felt a bit of air return to his lungs. But then she added, "However, we also have to look at the emotional and environmental side. The report suggested possible neglect, a father more focused on work than his sons." Her eyes met his and they were not unkind, but they were direct. "Can you tell me about your typical day, how much time you spend with them?" This was the part he had been dreading, not because he had something to hide right now, but because he knew there were months, even years, when the anonymous caller's words would have been almost true. He did not want to lie. He also did not want to paint himself as a monster in front of people with the power to judge him. So he chose a hard road, honesty. "I used to run from this house," he said quietly. "After my wife died and the boys were born with their condition, I threw myself into work. I told myself I was doing it for them, to pay for care, therapists, equipment, but the truth is I hid. The staff saw me leave early and come home late. They saw therapists going in and out while I was in my office or out of town. They probably thought I didn't care." He paused, his throat tight. "I did care. I was just afraid, afraid to hope, afraid to hurt more." Ms. Green wrote something, then looked up. "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said, glancing at the living room where the boys sat, "I moved my work into that corner." He pointed. "I've been there every day the last few weeks, watching their sessions, taking part when I can. I changed travel plans. I built my schedule around them, not the other way around. I'm late, but I'm here." There was a catch in his voice when he said the word late, and both social workers heard it. Mr. Torres glanced at Ms. Green and spoke for the first time in a while. "People can change," he said. "We don't punish them forever for how they coped with trauma as long as the children are safe now." Ms. Green nodded, but the lines on her forehead did not disappear. "There's one more thing," she said. "The report mentioned cameras, a lot of them. Sometimes excessive surveillance can suggest mistrust or a controlling environment. Can you show us how many cameras you have and explain how you use them?" Nathan had expected this. Without a word, he opened the security app on his phone and laid it on the table so they could see the grid of views. Front door, backyard, living room, playroom, hallway. No cameras in bedrooms or bathrooms. "I put them in after some bad experiences with previous caregivers," he explained. "One shouted at the boys when she thought no one was listening. One took photos of them to post online. I promised myself I would never again be blind to what was happening in my own house. The cameras are there to protect my sons, not to spy on them. Every person who works here knows they exist. I don't watch them every second anymore, but I like knowing if something goes wrong we have a record." "Do you mind if we view some footage?" Mr. Torres asked. "Especially of the exercises." Nathan's stomach twisted. He had watched those same videos full of fear and hope, but he nodded. "I'll pull up yesterday's session." He connected his phone to a larger screen mounted on the wall. Soon the room filled with moving images, Joy kneeling in front of the boys, laying down star stickers encouraging them, the triplets struggling, stepping, laughing. Ms. Green and Mr. Torres watched, their faces unreadable. When the moment came where Jonah nearly fell and the camera jerked, Nathan felt the same rush of panic he had felt in the hotel room. He almost wanted to skip it, but he let it play. The frame shook as the camera was bumped, the picture blurred, and for a second Jonah's body pitched forward. Then even through the jolt they could see Joy's arms flying out, grabbing him, holding him close, her own face twisted with fear and relief at the same time. "I've got you," her voice came through the tiny speaker. "I promised I wouldn't let you fall." The picture steadied again. Jonah, a bit shaken, buried his face in her shoulder for a moment, and she held him there, rocking him gently before letting him try again with more support. Mr. Torres exhaled slowly. "That doesn't look like abuse to me," he said quietly. "It looks like hard work and care." Ms. Green nodded, but just then, as if the universe could not allow things to be that simple, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me," she said, stepping away to answer. Mr. Torres continued to watch the video. He saw other little moments that had meant everything to Nathan. Micah's first bold lean forward, Caleb's heel lifting higher than before, Joy whispering, "You are stronger than you think," in tired ears. Nathan watched too, his own heart hurting at the memory of how close all this had come to being called something ugly by someone who did not understand. A minute later Ms. Green returned, her face more serious than before. "That was our office," she said. "The caller who made the report just sent in a short video clip. They said it proves their claim." Nathan's stomach dropped again. "What clip?" he asked. "From where?" "From here," she said. "From this room. It looks like security footage someone recorded with their phone while it played on a screen." She set her phone on the table and pressed play. The clip was short and shaky, clearly filmed by a handheld phone pointing at a screen. It showed Jonah in the frame mid-session, his face scrunched, tears running down his cheeks, his legs shaking. Joy's voice could be heard saying, "Come on, one more, you can do it." And then his foot slipped, and there was that split second where he pitched forward. The person recording had zoomed in right there and then cut the video before showing her catching him, making it look like he was falling helplessly, like no one was there to help. There was no sound after the slip, no view of him safe, just a freeze on the worst possible image. "It looks bad when you cut it like that," Ms. Green said quietly. "And whoever sent this knows it." Dr. Lawson leaned forward. "This is edited," she said firmly. "If you watch the full footage you just saw on his screen, you'll see she caught him. You'll see there was support, supervision, care. This short clip was designed to mislead you." Ms. Green sighed. "I believe that may be the case," she said, "but when my boss sees this kind of thing, they expect a strict response. There's already a note in the system saying we must consider all options, including temporary removal, while we investigate." The room went cold. Joy's hand flew to her mouth. The boys sensed the shift in mood and began to fuss. Micah made a whining sound. Caleb's face crumpled and Jonah's fingers started twisting again, fast and anxious. "Temporary removal," Nathan repeated, his voice low and dangerous in a way that made even the social workers tense. "You want to take my sons from the only home they've ever known, away from the therapist who understands them, away from the caregiver who has been fighting for them based on a chopped-up lie." "It's not what I want," Ms. Green said, her voice steady but not hard. "It's what the policy says we have to consider when there is a complaint that includes disability, physical stress, and a powerful parent who might be able to hide things." She looked him in the eye. "Some people with big houses and big names have done terrible things behind closed doors. We can't ignore that just because you have money and equipment." "I know that," Nathan snapped, then softer, almost pleading, "but that's not this. Do you not see how much effort and love is in every inch of this place? Do you not see what she's done for them, what we're trying to do now that I finally pulled my head out of the sand?" There was a long, thick silence. The triplets' fussing grew louder. Joy moved to calm them, her hands gentle, her voice shaking as she whispered, it's okay, you're safe, I promise." Finally Mr. Torres spoke. "Maybe there's a middle step," he suggested. "We could order increased monitoring, surprise visits, more documentation before we talk about something as drastic as removal." Ms. Green hesitated. "That's one possibility," she admitted. "But my supervisor will want something firm. The edited video will make them nervous, especially if the caller pushes for more action. They might say we're being too soft because he's rich." She turned back to Nathan. "There is one thing that could help," she said slowly. "If we had proof from the boy's doctor, a full medical statement, not just from the therapist but from their primary specialist, explaining that this program is beneficial and not harmful, it would carry a lot of weight. Right now we only have one professional voice on site." Nathan seized on that like a lifeline. "I can get that," he said. "Their neurologist, their pediatrician, whoever you need, I'll call them right now." Ms. Green shook her head. "They won't write a full report over the phone. They'll want to examine the boys again, run updated tests, see the progress with their own eyes. That takes time, and the pressure from my office is immediate. They want my decision today." The panic that had calmed a little now came roaring back. Time. They needed time and he did not have any. He looked at his sons, at their small bodies in their chairs, at the training frame that had become a symbol of both hope and risk. He looked at Joy, whose eyes were begging him to fix this, to protect them all. For a second he felt like he was back in the hospital, standing in that hallway while doctors spoke in rushed tones and machines beeped, and he had to decide whether to sign a form that would allow a risky surgery on Emily. He had felt powerless then. He refused to feel that way now. You said you have to consider removal, he said slowly, choosing his words like he chose moves in the stock market, carefully because one wrong one could cost everything. You did not say you have to do it. Ms. Green nodded. That's true, she said. We have room for professional judgment, but if something happens later and it turns out we missed signs, it will be on us. Nathan took a deep breath. Then watch, he said suddenly. Don't just look at old videos and short visits. If you're afraid I might hide something, then don't give me the chance. Come back a lot at random times. Stand in that corner and watch our sessions yourself. Talk to the doctors, talk to the staff, see the change in my sons. And if after all that you still think this house is unsafe, I will not stop you from doing your job. But please don't rip them away based on a cut-up clip that hides the whole story. The request hung in the air like a heavy flag. Mr. Torres looked at Ms. Green, clearly hoping she would agree. She pursed her lips, thinking, her eyes going to the boys once more. Jonah had calmed down and was now watching Joy's face, his fingers slowly loosening. Caleb leaned his head against his chair, tired. Micah, ever the noisy one, was humming to himself, his hand tapping against the armrest in a little rhythm. They did not look like children living in terror. They looked like children living in a heavy, complicated love. At last Ms. Green sighed. I can propose it, she said. Increased monitoring instead of immediate removal, but I can't promise my supervisor will agree. They've been very strict lately. Too many cases in the news where children were left in bad homes. We overcorrect. She closed her folder. I'll write my report today and send it. You'll hear from us soon. Nathan's heart sank at the word soon. It was too vague, too empty. He wanted a clear yes or no, something to hold on to, but this was not his boardroom. He was not in charge. As they walked to the door, Joy stayed back with the boys, her face pale, her eyes shining. Will they take them? She whispered to Nathan when Ms. Green stepped out ahead to speak with her driver. Tell me the truth. I don't know, he said, because he refused to lie to her. The answer made her look even more scared. But I know this, he added quickly. I am not the man I was 2 years ago. I will not stand still and watch someone else decide their future without fighting with everything I have. If they want to take my sons, they will have to walk through me, their doctors, and every piece of proof we can build. She nodded, but her hands still shook as she turned back to the boys, kissing each little forehead as if she could glue them to this house with her love. At the door, Ms. Green turned back one last time. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes held a tiny flicker of something like doubt, not about the children's safety, but about her own system's ability to see truth. We'll be in touch, she said. In the meantime, nothing in your routine changes except this. Document everything, every session, every bruise, every laugh, every new movement. If this goes further, you'll need more than good intentions. You'll need evidence. Then she and Mr. Torres stepped out into the fatting afternoon light and drove away, leaving the house quieter than before, but with a new heavy weight pressing down on all of them, the weight of waiting. When the door closed, Nathan leaned his forehead against it for a moment, the cool wood steady under his skin. Behind him, he heard a sound that cut through all the noise in his head. Jonah calling out, duh. It wasn't a full word, not clear, but it was the closest he had ever come. Nathan turned so fast he almost slipped. Jonah's mouth had already closed again, his face tired, but his eyes were locked on his father, full of something fierce and bright. Did you hear that? Joy whispered, her hand over her heart. He tried to say Dad. The timing hit Nathan like a punch. On the same day strangers came to question whether he was a father who cared enough, his son had reached for that exact name for the first time. It felt like the universe was giving him a message he could not ignore. Say it again, he begged softly, kneeling in front of Jonah. Come on, buddy, just once more. Jonah's lips moved. A tiny sound came out, more sigh than syllable, but hope did not always come in full words. Sometimes it came in broken sounds that still meant everything. Nathan smiled through the burn in his eyes. Okay, he said softly. Okay, I get it. I'll be the dad who fights. The day faded into evening. The boys ate, napped, laughed a little, cried a little, as children do. The adults moved through the house like people walking on thin ice, careful, listening for cracks. When night finally came and the triplets were asleep, Nathan and Joy sat at the dining table with papers spread out, therapy logs, doctor's cards, appointment calendars. We need that full medical report, Nathan said, tapping the table. And we need to know who sent that clip. If they have more, they might send it too. Joy hesitated, then cleared her throat. I think I know who it was, she said softly. I didn't want to say it earlier, but I saw someone last week, near the gate. She used to work here, the nanny before me. She asked me how the boys were and I told her they were doing better. I was excited. I mentioned they were trying to stand. She looked angry. She said, "He trusts you more than he trusted me. He never gave me a chance." Then she walked away. She had her phone out the whole time. Nathan closed his eyes for a second. Anger rose hot in his chest, not just at the woman but at himself, because he was the one who had fired her fast and hard without taking a moment to explain why, without seeing her hurt. He had done it to protect his sons, but he had also created another person who might want to hurt him back. "She wants to punish me," he said, "and she doesn't care that she could hurt them too in the process." "What are you going to do?" Joe asked. "Sue her." "Confront her?" "Not yet," he said. "Right now every move has to be about the boys, not revenge. If I look like I'm chasing someone down, they'll say I'm trying to scare a witness. We'll collect facts quietly and we'll get that doctor's report as fast as we can." He pushed back from the table and stood, his shadow stretching across the floor like a long, dark line. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'm taking them to the hospital myself. No assistant, no driver, just me, my sons, and the truth." He did not know that far across the city, in a small office full of files and buzzing lights, Ms. Green sat at her own desk, staring at two open windows on her computer screen, one playing the chopped-up video the caller had sent and one playing the full footage she had copied from Nathan's system. One looked like a child falling alone. The other looked like a child learning to stand in loving arms. Her finger hovered over the keys as she started to type her report, weighing words like stones, knowing that whichever way she leaned, a family's life would tilt with it. Back in the quiet house, as the boys slept and Joy whispered a soft prayer over them, Nathan stood in the doorway, watching the slow rise and fall of three tiny chests, and made another silent promise that would soon cost him more than he expected. If the system tried to label their hope as harm, he would not only fight it. He would expose the system itself. He had spent his life learning how to win in boardrooms and markets, but this would be his first battle in a world where money did not always buy the outcome, and where the next person to decide his son's fate might not be a therapist or a social worker at all, but a judge he had never met. The next morning started before the sun was fully awake. With the house still quiet and gray light just beginning to creep through the tall windows as Nathan moved through the hallway with a new kind of determination in his chest, a heavy mix of fear and courage that made his hands steady even though his heart was beating hard. He did not send the driver ahead to warm the car or ask an assistant to arrange anything. Instead, he went straight to the boys' room, opened the door softly, and stood for a moment just watching them sleep. Three small bodies curled in three little beds, their blankets rising and falling with each soft breath. For a second, a sharp thought stabbed through him. What if someone who did not know them looked at those thin legs and stiff hands and decided they were broken beyond help, decided he was trying too hard and called it harm instead of hope? That fear almost made him want to pull back, to cancel everything and keep them inside where no one could judge them. But then Jonah rolled his head slightly and made a small sound in his sleep, a sound that almost formed the shape of duh again, and that was enough to push Nathan forward. He walked over, touched each boy gently on the shoulder and whispered their names. They stirred slowly, blinking up at him with sleepy eyes. "Big day today, team," he said softly, forcing a smile into his voice so they would not feel his worry. "We're going to see the doctor. Not the one with the scary machines, the one who knows your brains and your legs. She's going to watch what you can do now. And she's going to help me tell those people from yesterday that you are not in danger, you are growing." The boys did not understand every word, but they knew his tone, and there was something steady in it that made them calm. Joy came in a moment later, tying her hair back with a rubber band, her eyes still showing the fear from the day before but also something else now. Resolve. "I didn't sleep much," she admitted quietly as they changed diapers, dressed the boys in soft tracksuits and comfortable shoes, and double-checked their feeding supplies for the trip. "Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that short video in my head and heard the words temporary removal. I kept thinking, what if they win, what if they take them away and I never see them again?" Nathan stopped for a moment, looking straight at her. "They are not winning," he said in a low, steady voice. "We're not going into this helpless. We have the truth and we have people who know it." They saw 1 second of fear and cut out all the seconds of care. "Today we put the whole story back together." When the boys were ready, Nathan did something he had never done before. He drove them himself. He knew how to drive, he simply always paid others to do it. But today it felt important that his hands be on the wheel. He and Joy carefully lifted each boy into special car seats in the back of his large SUV, securing every buckle, making sure every strap was placed right, every head supported. The chairs were folded and loaded into the trunk. As he checked each seat one last time, Micah grabbed his sleeve with a small, clumsy hand and held on for a second before letting go. "I know, buddy," Nathan murmured. "It's scary out there. but we're going together. The drive to the children's hospital was a blur of traffic lights, quiet roads, and his own thoughts. He remembered the first time he had driven this route years ago when the boys were tiny and still hooked up to wires, when doctors had filled his ears with long words and short hopes. Back then, he had walked these halls like a ghost. Today he parked in a special disability spot, turned off the engine and sat for just a second, listening to the small noises from the back seat. The rustle of clothes, a soft hum from Micah, a sleepy sigh from Jonah. "All right," he said, taking a deep breath, "let's go show the world what you've got." Inside the hospital, the smell of antiseptic and faint baby powder wrapped around them, pulling up old memories like shadows. Nurses moved quickly. Parents sat with children in wheelchairs and strollers. Machines beeped somewhere down long white halls. At the neurology and rehabilitation section, a nurse looked up as they rolled in, recognition lighting her face. "Mr. Reed," she said, "we haven't seen you in a while." Her eyes flicked to the boys and widened as she took in their slightly different posture, the new alertness in their gazes. "They look good. We've been working hard," Joy said quietly as she adjusted Jonah's blanket. "They've been working hard." The nurse smiled and told them to wait. The main specialist, Dr. Patel, would see them soon. When the doctor walked in, she was exactly as Nathan remembered, small with sharp eyes and a calm way of standing that made people want to trust her. She greeted the boys first, crouching down to their level and saying their names slowly, watching their eyes and hands. "They look more awake than last time," she said thoughtfully. "Show me what's been going on." In a small therapy room off the main hallway, with soft mats on the floor and bright animal posters on the walls, Nathan and Joy, guided by Dr. Lawson's notes, repeated some of the same exercises they had shown the social workers, but this time under the neurologist's watchful eye. They helped the boys into hospital standing frames, supported their hips, and gave gentle prompts. The boys were tired from the early morning, but something about being in a new room with new faces watching seemed to make them more focused. Jonah's heel lifted a little higher than before. Caleb shifted weight between his legs a fraction smoother. Micah, always the bold one, attempted a tiny half-step with so much determination that he let out a loud grunt, making everyone in the room smile. Dr. Patel watched in silence, then asked to feel their muscles herself. She gently pressed along their legs, moved their joints, tested reflexes. "When I first met them," she said slowly, "their tone was so high I could barely move their legs without resistance. Their reflexes were very sharp. I was honest with you back then, I did not see much chance of independent walking. But bodies change, especially in young children. Their brains make new paths. The work you have been doing, the stretching, the standing, even these attempts at stepping, it has made a difference. They have more control now, more selective movement." Nathan felt his chest fill with something like relief and anger at the same time. Relief that someone with official power could see what Joy had seen. Anger that it had taken so long for him to believe it. "Does this program put them in danger?" he asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Someone reported us, said we were forcing them into painful positions, said they were not safe. Child welfare came to the house. They may come back with more demands, maybe even push for removal. I need more than my own word to fight that." Dr. Patel's eyes flashed with a mix of sadness and frustration. "I have seen both sides," she said quietly. "I've seen children truly abused in the name of treatment and children who were harmed more by being overprotected than by being challenged. Your case is not abuse. What you are doing is hard, yes, and sometimes uncomfortable for them, but from what I have seen and what Dr. Lawson has reported, it is balanced by careful monitoring, rest, and love. It is not reckless, it is guided hope." She moved to her desk and pulled up her computer, typing quickly. "I will write a full statement today," she said. "Not in a month, today. I will describe their original condition, their diagnosis, and their current status. I will explain that the new physical program is medically supervised, that it aims to increase function not for show but for real quality of life. I will also state that sudden removal from their current environment without a clear reason would likely cause emotional and developmental harm." Her fingers clicked harder on that last sentence. "You will give this to the social workers. If they want more, they can call me." It was the first time in a long time that Nathan felt like a doctor was not just telling him bad news or limits, she was stepping into the fight with him. While she worked, a twist came that none of them expected. There was a knock on the door and the nurse peeked in, looking slightly unsure. "Mr. Reed," she said, "this might be awkward, but there's someone outside asking to speak to you. She says she used to work in your home as a nanny. I told her this isn't really the place, but she's crying. You want me to call security or—" Nathan's shoulders tensed. He didn't have to ask who it was. His first thought was to say, "Tell her to leave." His second thought, the one tinged with anger, imagine marching out there and shouting at her for putting his sons through this. But another part of him, the part that had watched a cut video almost ruin everything, knew that facing her might be important both for his heart and for the truth. "I'll talk to her," he said tightly. He turned to Joy. "Stay with them. Don't let them get anxious." Joy nodded, worry deep in her eyes but trust there too. Outside in the waiting area, the ex-nanny sat in a plastic chair, her hair messier than he remembered, her eyes red, her hands twisting in her lap. When she saw him, she stood up too fast and almost stumbled. "Mr. Reed," she blurted out, "I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't come here, but they told me I can't contact you at the house, and the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. And then I saw a notice on my phone that the child welfare people might come back with more questions, and He held up a hand, stopping the rush of words. "You sent that video," he said. It was not a question. She flinched. "Yes," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "I did. I was angry. You fired me so fast. You didn't listen when I tried to explain why I'd taken those photos for my page. You didn't ask if I meant harm, you just cut me out of their lives. You posted their private faces online," he snapped. "You turned my sons into props for your sad story. That was not harmless." She nodded quickly, crying harder now. I know," she said. "And you were right to be mad. I thought I loved them too. And I thought if people saw them, maybe they'd send prayers or money for kids like them. It was stupid. And when you fired me, I felt like you didn't see anything good I'd done, only the mistake. So when I heard from someone in the staff that you had a new girl and that she was doing risky things like making them stand, I felt jealous. And scared. I thought, if something happens to those boys now, no one will know it's because he let that girl push them too hard. So I took the video from your security feed the day they showed me how the system worked before I left. I cut it to the worst part. I sent it. I told myself I was protecting them. But when the social worker called me back to ask questions and I saw their faces when they said they might take the boys away, I realized what I'd done. I'm not just hurting you, I'm hurting them. I didn't think they'd go that far." Nathan's jaw clenched. It would have been easy to shout at her, to blame her for everything, to say she was just jealous and selfish. And yes, she had been those things, but as she spoke he also saw something else, his own part in the story. He had fired her like he closed a door, fast, final, without looking back or explaining. She had been wrong, but he had given her no chance to understand or grow. Pain mixed with regret had turned into revenge. "Why are you here?" he asked quietly. "What do you want?" "To fix it," she choked out. "Or at least to try. I called the office back this morning and told them the clip was cut. I told them I had the full video on my phone too, from when I first recorded the screen. They told me to send it. I did. You caught him, they saw that, but I know that might not be enough, so if they ask, I'll tell them everything. I'll tell them I used you being rich as an excuse to push you. I'll tell them I lied by hiding the rest. I'll say if anyone should be punished, it's me, not that maid, not your boys." For a long moment Nathan stared at her, anger and something like pity fighting inside him. She was not a monster. She was a human who had made a bad choice out of hurt, like he had once chosen distance instead of love out of his own fear. "You can't fix everything with one apology," he said at last. "You almost broke my family. But if you're honest now, if you tell them the whole truth, you can at least stop more damage." She nodded, tears still falling. "I will," she said. "I promise." He nodded curtly, then turned back toward the therapy room. As he walked away, she called softly after him, voice shaking. "Tell them I'm sorry," she said. "Tell the boys I never wanted them hurt." He did not answer, but his silence was not full of hate anymore. Back in the therapy room, Dr. Patel finished printing the statement, signed it with a firm hand, and handed several copies to Nathan and one to Joy. "Take this home," she said. "Give a copy to the social workers, keep one for yourself. If this goes to court, your lawyer will need it, and if they want me to come in person, I will." "You do that?" Nathan asked, surprised. "You'd stand in court for us," she smiled faintly. "I stand for children who cannot stand for themselves," she said simply. "That is my job, and these three have been fighting harder than most." On the ride home, the boys fell asleep in their seats, their mouths slack, their faces peaceful. Joy sat beside them, one hand resting lightly on Micah's knee, her eyes half closed with her own tiredness. Nathan drove with one eye on the road and one on the mirror, watching all of them like a man guarding treasure. He did not know when child welfare would call again, or what choice Ms. Green's supervisor would make. But he knew now that he was not as powerless as he had felt. He had facts, allies, and a story that was starting to make sense again. The call came 2 days later in the late afternoon, when the boys were in the living room watching a cartoon and Joy was on the floor beside them, building a tower of soft blocks. Ms. Green's name flashed on his phone. His stomach flipped, but he answered. "Mr. Reed," she said, and there was a different tone in her voice now, not sharp, not accusing, more tired and thoughtful. "We received the full medical statement from Dr. Patel. We also received a second clip from the original caller that shows your caregiver catching your child and comforting him. The caller admitted they edited the first video out of anger. They will be dealt with separately for filing a misleading report." Nathan exhaled slowly. And what does that mean for my sons? He asked. There was a pause. He could almost hear papers being turned. It means, she said, that we are not seeking removal. There will be no emergency order. Instead, we are closing the serious danger investigation and moving to a lighter level. Periodic checks and open communication with your therapists and doctors. We may visit from time to time without warning, but those visits will be to confirm that what we saw, the care, the structure, the supervised risk, is continuing. Nathan closed his eyes. For a moment he did not trust himself to speak. If he did, he might cry, and he did not want to do that on the phone with a government worker who had seen many tears. Thank you, he managed at last. I know you were doing your job. I also know I made some of this easier for people to believe by being distant for so long. That won't happen again. Ms. Green was quiet for a moment, then said something he did not expect. I wrote in my report, she said slowly, that you are a father who used to run away from his pain but is now learning to stand still in it for his children. Our system is not perfect, Mr. Reed. Sometimes we hurt good families when we try to protect children from bad ones. I'm glad in this case we did not make that mistake, but I will be honest, it was close. If you had yelled more, hidden more, or refused to cooperate, it might have gone another way. So next time you meet a worker like me, remember that our view is small and our fear is big, and the best thing you can do for your boys is to let us see the whole picture. He thought of her in her office, watching the two videos, wrestling with her own fears and rules. Thank you for seeing more this time, he said quietly. After she hung up, he stood for a moment in the middle of the hallway, letting the news sink in. No removal, no emergency court. There might still be surprise visits, but surprise visits he could handle. Losing his sons he could not. When he walked into the living room, Joy looked up immediately, searching his face. He did not make her wait. They're not taking them, he said simply. The case is stepping down. We'll have checkups, not battles. The doctor's report helped, and so did the truth about that video. For a heartbeat, Joy just stared. Then she let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh and dropped her forehead to the mat. Thank God, she whispered. Thank God. The boys, sensing the sudden joy in the room, began to move and make noise. Micah flapped his hands and squealed. Jonah smiled in his soft, quiet way. Caleb made a happy hum and bumped his chair lightly against the table. We still have work, Nathan said, wiping his eyes quickly before the boys could see. This doesn't fix their legs. It doesn't undo the hard days. But it gives us space to keep trying without looking over our shoulder every minute. That evening they all sat together in the living room, Nathan on the floor in his white shirt and socks instead of in his office, Joy beside him with her legs crossed, the boys in a row of wheelchairs facing the training frame. The house lamps were on low, giving everything a warm glow. The storm outside their walls had quieted. Now there was a calm after the storm, the kind where you look around and count what is still standing. I want us to try something, Nathan said suddenly. Not because visitors are coming or cameras are watching, just for us. He and Joy, following Dr. Lawson's careful instructions, helped each boy into the frame one by one. They set the stars on the floor again, only two this time, not a whole path, one small goal then another. Jonah went first. His hands gripped the bar harder than usual, like he could feel the weight of all the days before this one. Hey, Nathan murmured, standing in front of him now instead of watching from the side. Remember when you reached for me at the door? You started something that day. Let's see where it goes. Joy stood at his side, one hand on the frame, the other ready near his chest. Shift left, she said softly. Heel up just a little. Jonah's heel lifted. It stayed up a bit longer this time, his lips pressing together in effort. Then it came down, closer to the sticker than before. It was not a full step. It was not a miracle like in a movie. But Nathan felt something break open in his heart anyway. Caleb's turn came. He was in a playful mood, making a funny noise every time his heel lifted, like a little sound effect for his own effort. Micah, who never did anything quietly, tried to take a bigger half step again and almost overdid it, but Joy and Nathan were both right there, hands ready, catching him before he could tumble. Slow down, Tiger, Nathan laughed, the sound surprising even himself. We have time. After the practice, they settled the boys back in their chairs and gave them a small treat, some fruit mash and a special cartoon. While the TV played, Nathan went to his desk and pulled out a frame, the kind people use to hold photos. He printed something from his computer, slid the paper inside, and placed the frame on the shelf above the training bar. Joy noticed when she looked up. What's that? She asked. He smiled a little. It's a promise, he said. On the paper, in simple, plain words, he had written, we will not let fear pretend to be safety. We will not let other people's limits become your future. We will make room for hard work, loud hope, and brave steps, one small move at a time. Weeks turned into months. There were still visits from child welfare, not as painful now, more like check-ins than searches, especially when Ms. Green came herself and actually smiled when she saw the boys greeting her with more sounds and tiny arm movements. There were still hard days when the boys cried and refused to cooperate, when muscles locked and joints hurt, when even Joy's smile wobbled at the edges. There were nights when Nathan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, asking himself if he was strong enough to walk this long road. But there were also new things. Jonah learning to push his wheelchair a few inches on his own, his hands shaky on the wheels but determined. Caleb holding his head up for longer during sitting exercises, his eyes tracking a ball across the room. Micah discovering that if he banged his foot just right, he could make his shoe light up, and laughing so hard that everyone else laughed too. One sunny afternoon, on a day when the air was clear and the house smelled like fresh bread, something happened that none of them had planned. Dr. Lawson had come over for her usual session. Ms. Green had arrived unannounced for a quick observation. The living room was full of people and equipment and quiet chatter. They decided to try the frame again like usual with careful steps, no rush. This time, however, something felt different in the air, like a moment waiting to be born. They helped the boys up one by one. When it was Jonah's turn, he seemed especially alert, his eyes bright, his fingers tapping the bar in a steady rhythm. "We'll just do our normal," Joy said. "2 weight shifts, no more." But as they guided his hips as his heel lifted and came down near the star, something inside him must have clicked into place. Maybe it was the weeks of work, maybe it was the watching of his brothers, maybe it was simply the right day. Without any extra prompt, Jonah's other foot dragged slightly forward on its own, a tiny slide on the mat that turned a shift into the ghost of a step. Everyone froze. "Did you see that?" Dr. Lawson whispered. "He initiated that, that was him." Again Nathan breathed, barely daring to hope. "If he can." They gave Jonah a moment to rest, then gently prompted again. This time as they helped him shift weight, his toes curled, his leg trembled, and his foot moved forward a little more. It was messy, it was not straight, it would not win any race. But it was a step, supported and guided, yet still his. Joy's face crumpled as she laughed and cried at the same time. "You did it," she whispered, her forehead almost touching his. "You took a step." Ms. Green, who had seen too many sad homes, too many promises broken, pressed her lips together, her eyes shining. She had come to check for harm. She was now watching a boy she had once almost agreed to remove take a step in his own living room with his father's hand and his caregiver's hand both close beside him. "We need to be careful," Dr. Lawson warned gently, even as her voice shook with joy. "No big jumps in goals just because of this. But yes, write it down. First initiated step with support." That night, after the house was quiet and the boys were asleep, Nathan stood again in the living room, looking at the frame on the shelf and the frame on the floor. One held the written promise. The other held the actual training device that had started as a symbol of fear and was now a tool of hope. Joy walked in wearing a soft sweater, her hair down, her face still glowing from the day's events. "Do you ever think," she asked softly, "about how different things would be if you had never opened that camera app in the hotel, if you had never caught us that day? Maybe we would be doing the same work, but you wouldn't believe in it the same way." He thought about it. "Maybe," he said honestly. "Or maybe I would have come home one day, seen them taking steps without warning, and still had my world broken open. Either way, I'm glad I know now, even if it scared me. Even if it brought social workers to my door. Knowing the truth is still better than living in a safe lie." Joy nodded, then looked toward the boys' room. "They're changing more than their own legs," she said quietly. "They're changing you and me and that social worker and even that old nanny who finally told the truth. 3 little boys in little chairs teaching big people how to be brave." There it was, the deepest twist of all. The story had started with a billionaire who thought he was the one who had to fix everything with his money, who thought the worst thing that had happened to him was losing his wife and hearing the words, "They may never walk." But now, standing in his own living room, he understood that the real miracle was not just in whether his sons' feet touched the floor in new ways. It was in how their fight to move at all had moved everyone around them. He had gone from a man running away from his pain to a father sitting on mats, learning new exercises, wiping tiny tears, and opening his door even to people who frightened him because he refused to hide the truth anymore. As he stood there, he knew this story did not end with a big loud scene of 3 boys suddenly running across a field. Real life was slower than that, messier. Some days would still bring new setbacks. His sons might always need help. They might never walk the way other children did, but they would walk their own way through this world, with small brave steps, with wheels and frames and people who believed in them. And that would be enough. He turned off the living room lights, leaving only the small night light glowing by the stairs, and went upstairs to check on them one last time. In the dim glow, he could see Jonah's hand slightly relaxed by his side, Caleb's leg propped on a pillow, Micah's mouth open in a soft snore. He leaned over each one, kissed their foreheads, and whispered, "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to keep fighting, one tiny step at a time." Then he looked up at the sky outside the window, dark and full of stars, and for the first time in a long time, he did not ask, "Why me?" but "Thank you for letting me be their dad." If you're still watching and listening to this story, I want to ask you something from my heart. Have you ever felt like the experts, the people around you, or even your own fear told you that something in your life was impossible? After hearing what happened in this house, do you still believe that word means what you thought it did? Where are you watching from right now? What country? What city? Tell us in the comments and also tell us what part of this story touched you the most, because your words might give someone else the courage to take their next small step. If you believe that even one shaky, supported step can be the beginning of a miracle, type miracle in the comments so that other people can see it and remember that hope is still alive. And please, subscribe to this channel to support our growth.